News of humanity's victory at Gamma Centauri spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. For the first time in months, the endless stream of defeat and retreat had been broken. Species that had been preparing for extinction suddenly dared to hope again. But the celebration was short-lived. "Sir, we're receiving emergency transmissions from the core worlds," reported Communications Officer Park Jai, from the bridge of the Soul's Vengeance. "Massive Vorthak fleets are converging on the inner systems." Admiral Yejin studied the tactical displays with growing concern. The Vorthak weren't retreating after all. They were regrouping, and their new formations were larger than anything seen before. Hundreds of bioships, each one the size of a small moon, were moving toward the heart of galactic civilization. "They're learning," Dr. Hayri reported from her research station. "Our chaos tactics worked because they couldn't predict them. But they're adapting faster than we expected." General Kyung-ho arrived on the flagship within hours, his weathered face grim with determination. At 90 years old, he had lived through humanity's exile and now their return to war. He brought with him intelligence that changed everything. "We can't win a defensive war," he announced to the assembled fleet commanders. "Every engagement teaches them more about our tactics. Eventually, they'll find patterns in our chaos." Colonel Namsu, the fleet's tactical specialist, activated a holographic map showing Vorthak positions throughout the galaxy. "They're consolidating their forces. If we let them finish this buildup, they'll have enough ships to overwhelm us through sheer numbers." "What are you suggesting?" asked Admiral Taemin, who had become humanity's strongest alien ally. "We attack their home base," Kyung-ho said simply. "The Galactic Rim. We end this before they can adapt to us completely." The alien representatives were horrified. Ambassador Colvin of the Trade Federation stood up immediately. "That's suicide. The Rim is their stronghold. No one has ever successfully attacked into Vorthak territory." "Because no one has ever tried," Admiral Yejin replied. "Every species in this galaxy fights defensively. You build walls and hope they hold. But the best defense isn't a wall. It's making sure your enemy can't attack in the first place." Dr. Hayri's research team had been working around the clock to understand Vorthak technology. What they discovered gave them hope and terror in equal measure. "The hive mind has a physical component," she explained to the War Council. "Massive structures in the Rim that coordinate their consciousness across galactic distances. Destroy those and the Vorthak revert to individual organisms without their collective intelligence." "How do we find these structures?" asked Captain Ji-woo, now commanding a squadron of reconnaissance ships. "We already have," Hayri replied, displaying stellar cartography data. "They're not hiding them. Why would they? No one has ever been powerful enough to threaten them in their own territory." The assault fleet that assembled was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships formed the core, their ugly, aggressive designs a stark contrast to the elegant alien vessels supporting them. But even the alien ships had been modified with human weapons that prioritized destruction over beauty. Captain Dahi's stealth ship Ghost of Incheon would lead the advance reconnaissance. Her crew had been expanded to include specialists in psychological warfare and advanced demolitions. Warrant Officer Jun Seo, formerly a mining engineer, had developed explosive devices specifically designed to disrupt biomechanical systems. "Remember," Dahi told her crew as they prepared to enter Vorthak space, "we're not just gathering intelligence. We're going to start the fight before the main fleet arrives." As the Ghost slipped through the outer defenses of the Galactic Rim, its crew got their first look at the true scope of Vorthak civilization. Entire star systems had been converted into massive biomechanical constructs. Planets had been hollowed out and turned into living factories that produced endless streams of war vessels. "Dear gods," whispered Dr. Siwon, staring at the sensor readings. "They've been building this for millennia. The ships we've been fighting are just the scouts." The largest construct was a station the size of a small moon, its surface covered in organic towers that pulsed with bioelectrical energy. This was clearly one of the hive mind's control centers, coordinating Vorthak forces across thousands of light years. "Target confirmed," Dahi reported to the main fleet, beginning infiltration. What followed was the most dangerous covert operation in human history. Jun Seo and his demolitions team had to infiltrate a living station that could detect their presence through bioelectrical sensors. Every surface they touched could potentially alert the hive mind to their presence. "The walls are learning our biometric signatures," Jun Seo reported as they moved through corridors that felt more like arteries than hallways. We need to move fast. Meanwhile, the main assault fleet was preparing for the largest military engagement in galactic history. Admiral Ye-Jin stood on the bridge of the Soul's Vengeance, surrounded by tactical displays showing the deployment of over 10,000 ships from dozens of species. All fleet commanders. "This is Admiral Ye-Jin," she broadcast across the assembled armada. "In 1 hour we jump to the rim. Remember, we're not just fighting for our own species. We're fighting for the right of free peoples to exist in this galaxy." Captain Sung-Ho prepared his battlecruiser, Busan's Pride, for what he knew would be a suicide mission. His ship and several others had been designated as the first wave, designed to break through Vorthak defenses and create chaos for the main fleet to exploit. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "all systems show green. We're ready for combat." Sung-Ho looked around his bridge at the young faces of his crew. Most of them had never seen combat before humanity's return to galactic affairs. They were volunteers, every one of them, who had signed up knowing they probably wouldn't survive this battle. "For everyone the galaxy has lost," he said quietly. "For every world they've consumed. For every voice they've silenced." The jump to the galactic rim brought the Allied fleet face to face with the true might of the Vorthak Empire. Biofleets numbering in the tens of thousands rose to meet them, their organic hulls gleaming with bioluminescent warning patterns. "All ships," Admiral Ye-Jin commanded, "implement full chaos protocol. No formations, no coordination, no predictable patterns. Show them what happens when order meets madness." The Battle of the Rim began with humanity's trademark insanity. Ships attacked from impossible angles, used weapons in ways they were never designed for, and ignored every principle of military science. The Busan's Pride led the charge, its crew singing ancient war songs as they dove into the heart of the Vorthak formation. Deep inside the hive mind control station, Jun Seo and his team reached their target. The central core was a massive biomechanical brain, its neural pathways spanning hundreds of meters. It was beautiful and terrible, a work of organic engineering that had taken thousands of years to grow. "Entropy charges are set," Jun Seo reported. "Detonation in 30 seconds." Dr. Chang Min, the team's specialist in quantum weapons, made final adjustments to his experimental device. Instead of destroying the hive mind core, his entropy bomb would introduce pure chaos into its neural network. "Remember," he said to his team, "we're not killing it. We're driving it insane." The explosion that followed changed everything. Not a physical blast, but a wave of pure disorder that raced through the Vorthak hive mind at the speed of thought. Across the rim, perfectly coordinated bioships suddenly began firing on each other as their shared consciousness collapsed into madness. But victory came at a terrible price. The Busan's Pride was destroyed in the opening minutes of the battle, taking Captain Sung-Ho and his entire crew with it. 17 other human ships followed, their captains choosing death over retreat. Admiral Ye-Jin watched the casualty reports mount as the battle raged around the rim. Over 60% of the human fleet was gone, including many of humanity's finest commanders. But their sacrifice had broken the Vorthak Empire. As her own flagship came under attack by 3 massive bioships, Ye-Jin made her final decision. "All hands abandon ship," she ordered. "I'm setting the reactor to overload." "Admiral, we can still get you out," her first officer protested. Ye-Jin shook her head. "My place is with my ship. Tell them we remembered how to be human." The Soul's Vengeance exploded in the heart of the Vorthak formation, taking the 3 attacking bioships with it. Across the battlefield, the surviving Vorthak ships began to withdraw as their hive mind fragmented completely. The war was over. The galaxy was saved, but humanity had paid a price that would never be forgotten. The neutral station Haven's Rest had been designed as a place where different species could meet safely. Its corridors were wide enough for the massive Zentari, its atmosphere carefully balanced to support dozens of different alien biologies. But today the station felt more like a powder keg waiting to explode. Ambassador Su Jin walked through the diplomatic section, followed by her security detail. She could feel the stares of alien representatives as they passed. Some looked at the humans with curiosity, others with barely concealed fear. Most had never seen a human before except in historical records about the Titan incident. "Remember," she told her team quietly, "we're not here to apologize. We're here to negotiate from a position of strength. The main conference room fell silent as the human delegation entered. Representatives from 47 different species sat around a massive circular table. At the far end, Admiral Taemin stood next to a holographic display showing the latest Vorthak attacks. "Delegates," Taemin began, "thank you for coming. In the past week alone, we have lost 6 more star systems. The Vorthak advance continues unchecked." He activated the display showing real-time footage from the Kepler Defense Fleet's final battle. The human delegates watched as perfectly coordinated Vorthak bioships tore through conventional defenses like they were made of paper. Counselor Veltan of the Zentari spoke first. "We appreciate humanity's willingness to assist, but we must discuss terms carefully. The last time humans were involved in galactic affairs—" "The last time," General Kyung-ho interrupted, "we saved your collective hides from the Cortex invasion, and you repaid us by painting us as monsters." The Ashani representative, her crystalline form chiming softly, leaned forward. "The Titan incident resulted in the deaths of millions of innocent civilians. Your military tactics were deemed excessively brutal by all galactic standards." Su-Jin stood up slowly. "Let me make something clear. We're not here to relitigate the past. You exiled us, we accepted exile, but now you need our help. Here are our terms." She activated her own holographic display showing a detailed proposal. Full reinstatement in the Galactic Council. Complete access to trade networks. Territorial expansion rights for human colonies. And reparations for 300 years of forced isolation. The alien representatives erupted in outrage. The Meridian Elder Rohan raised his hand for silence. "Those terms are unreasonable," he said calmly. "We cannot simply forget 3 centuries of policy, because you offer to help with our current crisis." Admiral Ye Jin, who had been silent until now, stood up. She walked to the main holographic display and pulled up new footage. This time it showed the complete destruction of the Rigel Research Complex. "Unreasonable?" she asked quietly. "What's unreasonable is watching civilizations die while you debate diplomatic protocol." The footage showed Vorthak bioships literally consuming the research station. The alien delegates watched in horror as 2 million people simply vanished, absorbed into the enemy vessels. "This happened yesterday," Yejin continued. "While you were preparing for this meeting, an entire star system died. How many more will you lose while arguing about our terms?" Dr. Jinne activated her portable computer and began displaying tactical analysis. "We've studied every Vorthak engagement. They're perfect. Their tactics never vary because they don't need to. They analyze enemy patterns, find the optimal counter, and execute it flawlessly." She showed battle after battle, each following the same pattern. Conventional forces would establish defensive positions. The Vorthak would analyze their setup, then destroy them using precisely calculated attacks. "That's their weakness," Jinne explained to the stunned assembly. "They can only fight perfect enemies. They can't adapt to true chaos, to tactics that make no logical sense." Captain Sung-min, who commanded one of humanity's new destroyer squadrons, stepped forward. "Our ships are already deploying throughout the galaxy. We've broken standard fleet doctrine completely. Every captain fights their own way, uses their own tactics. No patterns, no predictability." "That's madness," protested the Trade Federation representative. "Military forces require coordination and discipline." "Against a logical enemy, yes," General Kyung-ho replied. "But the Vorthak are too logical. They expect rational responses to their attacks. We're going to give them something they've never encountered before, an enemy that doesn't play by any rules." The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. Another Vorthak attack interrupted the proceedings, this time hitting a major industrial world. The death toll reached 8 million before the transmission cut off. The vote was close, but fear won over pride. Humanity was granted emergency reinstatement in the Galactic Council, along with most of their demands. Within hours, human warships began arriving throughout the galaxy. Admiral Taemin found himself assigned as liaison to the human fleet. When he first saw the human ships up close, he understood why his ancestors had feared them. They were ugly, brutal machines that looked like they had been designed for one purpose: destruction. The human destroyer Busan's Fury looked nothing like the elegant vessels in his own fleet. Its hull was angular and aggressive, covered in armor plating and weapon ports. There was no attempt at aesthetic beauty, no consideration for anything except maximum combat effectiveness. "Different design philosophy," Captain Sung-min explained, as he gave Taimin a tour of his ship. Your people build ships like works of art. We build them like hammers. The bridge was cramped and efficient with multiple redundant systems. Everything was designed to keep fighting even when damaged. Taimin noticed that the crew seemed more relaxed than his own officers, but there was an underlying tension, a readiness for violence that made him uncomfortable. Admiral, we're receiving reports of Vorthak activity in the Gamma Centauri system. The communications officer reported. Mixed fleet is moving to intercept. As the combined human and alien fleet approached the Vorthak-occupied system, Taimin watched the tactical displays with growing confusion. The human ships were scattering, abandoning all formation and coordination. What are they doing? He asked Sungmin. This violates every principle of fleet tactics. Sungmin grinned. That's the idea. The Vorthak hive mind is trying to analyze our formation right now. They're looking for patterns, trying to predict our attack vectors. On the tactical display, 7 different human squadrons were approaching from completely different directions. Some were moving at full speed, others were drifting slowly. One frigate was actually flying backwards. They can't analyze what doesn't make sense, Sungmin continued. While they're trying to calculate our strategy, we'll be inside their formation causing chaos. The Vorthak bioships emerged from behind Gamma Centauri's largest moon in perfect formation, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. They moved with mathematical precision, arranging themselves in an optimal defensive pattern. Then the human ships attacked from 7 directions at once, each using completely different tactics. The first shots of humanity's return to galactic warfare had been fired. The Battle of Gamma Centauri began like no military engagement in recorded history. As the Vorthak bioships moved into their perfect defensive formation, the human fleet did something that made Admiral Taimin question everything he knew about warfare. They went completely insane. Commander Jae-sung's squadron attacked first, but instead of the coordinated assault that any rational military force would expect, his ships scattered in 7 different directions. The frigate Sol's Hammer accelerated directly toward the Vorthak line at maximum speed, its captain apparently intent on ramming the enemy vessels. What is he doing? Taimin demanded from the bridge of Sungmin's destroyer. His job, Sungmin replied calmly, watching as the Hammer plowed straight into the Vorthak formation. But instead of ramming, the frigate launched a spread of quantum mines at point-blank range before spinning away on an impossible trajectory. The Vorthak hive mind tried to process this attack pattern. It was completely inefficient, wasteful of resources, and tactically unsound, but it worked. 3 bioships were destroyed by the unexpected mine deployment, their perfect formation suddenly broken. Meanwhile, Captain Dahi's stealth ship, Ghost of Incheon, was doing something even stranger. Instead of using its advanced targeting systems, the ship was broadcasting human music directly at the Vorthak vessels. Not just any music, but something called death metal that seemed to interfere with the bioelectrical systems of the enemy ships. The Vorthak coordinate through bioelectrical pulses, Dr. Siwon explained from the Ghost Science Station. This music operates on similar frequencies but in completely chaotic patterns. It's like screaming static into their communication network. On the main tactical display, Taimin watched the Vorthak formation begin to waver. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination moments before were now hesitating. Their responses delayed as their hive minds struggled to process the chaos erupting around them. Lieutenant Colonel Yoon-ji led the first boarding action in galactic history against Vorthak vessels. Instead of using sophisticated breaching pods like civilized military forces, her Marines attacked with cutting torches and explosive charges, literally burning holes through the biomechanical hulls. Remember, she told her squad as they prepared to board the enemy ship. These things think like computers. They'll expect us to use standard breach protocols, secure the bridge, disable weapon systems, so we're going to do the opposite. Sergeant Wu Jin kicked down a bulkhead and charged into the Vorthak vessel with a flamethrower. The biomechanical corridors pulsed around them like the inside of a living creature, walls that could probably adapt to resist energy weapons or kinetic projectiles, but they had never evolved to resist fire. The Vorthak drones they encountered were perfectly designed killing machines, their biomechanical bodies optimized for combat efficiency. They moved with inhuman precision, their weapons integrated into their very flesh. Against any rational opponent, they would have been unstoppable, but they had never fought humans in melee combat. Wu Jin's flamethrower turned the narrow corridor into hell. The organic walls began to burn and writhe, disrupting the ship's internal systems. Behind him, Private Jun Seo attacked with nothing more than a vibro knife and pure human aggression, targeting weak points that no logical warrior would have exposed themselves to reach. "They're in shock," Yunji reported as her squad fought through the ship's organic corridors. These drones were designed to fight enemies that follow tactical doctrine. They don't know how to respond to berserkers. The turning point came when Dr. Boram discovered something that changed everything. The Vorthak hive mind didn't just share tactical information, it shared everything, including pain, confusion, and fear. "Captain," she called from her science station, "they're all connected. When we hurt one ship, the entire fleet feels it. When we confuse one drone, it spreads through their network." Captain Sungmin grinned fiercely. "All ships implement Protocol Nightmare. I want every psychological warfare system we have broadcasting into their network." Within minutes, the human fleet was pumping chaos directly into the Vorthak hive mind. Horror movies, discordant music, recordings of human laughter, even random static. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Vorthak ships began to falter. Their perfect formations dissolved as individual vessels started making irrational decisions. Some tried to retreat while others attacked their own allies. The hive mind overwhelmed by contradictory impulses. Admiral Taemin watched in amazement as the most disciplined military force in the galaxy descended into complete chaos. "How is this possible? They've conquered dozens of star systems. They've conquered logical opponents," General Kyung-ho explained from the command ship. "Species that fight with honor, follow rules, use predictable tactics. They've never faced an enemy willing to embrace complete madness." The battle's climax came when Captain Hyunwoo of the cruiser Eternal Defiance did something that violated every principle of military engagement. His ship was badly damaged, surrounded by Vorthak vessels, with no hope of escape. So he rammed his ship directly into the largest Vorthak bioship and detonated his reactor. The explosion consumed both vessels, but the psychological impact was far greater than the physical damage. The Vorthak hive mind, which had never experienced genuine sacrifice for an abstract concept, went into complete system shock. "Impossible," the alien bioships transmitted in their first direct communication with the human fleet. "Tactical analysis indicates zero strategic value in sacrificial attack. Why would combat unit destroy itself for no gain?" Admiral Yejin's voice rang across all communication frequencies. "Because some things are worth dying for, you monsters, and you'll never understand that." The first Vorthak retreat in 1,000 years began as the surviving bioships withdrew from Gamma Centauri. But it wasn't a strategic withdrawal. It was panic. Their perfect hive mind had encountered something it couldn't analyze, couldn't predict, couldn't understand. As human reinforcements arrived, led by the massive dreadnought Soul's Vengeance, the remaining Vorthak fled toward the Galactic Rim. "This is Admiral Yejin of the human colonial fleet." Her voice broadcast across the galaxy. "Gamma Centauri is secure. The Vorthak have been reminded that perfection has a weakness. It can't adapt to chaos." In the aftermath of the battle, alien military observers studied the human tactics with fascination and horror. The humans had won not through superior technology or numbers, but by fighting in ways that made no logical sense. Captain Sungmin found Admiral Taemin staring at the tactical reports hours after the battle ended. "Your people saved us," Taemin said quietly. "But I have to ask, how do you train soldiers to fight like that? How do you prepare someone to sacrifice themselves for strangers?" Sungmin was quiet for a long moment. "You don't train them to do it. They choose to do it. That's what makes us human." As news of the victory spread across the galaxy, something changed in the war against the Vorthak. For the first time since the invasion began, species across the galaxy felt hope. The perfect enemy had been defeated, not by perfect tactics, but by pure human stubbornness. But the Vorthak were not finished. Deep in the Galactic Rim, their hive mind was already adapting, learning from the encounter. They had faced chaos before and survived. The question was whether humanity could stay unpredictable long enough to finish what they had started. The real war was just beginning. Captain Jiwoo couldn't believe what she was seeing on her communication screen. After 3 centuries of silence, an official message from the Galactic Council had just arrived at her survey ship New Sol. The automated translation systems worked overtime to convert the alien text. But the meaning was clear. Humanity was being invited back. "Captain, are you seeing this?" Her first officer, Lieutenant Dong Hyuk, leaned over her shoulder to read the message. "They want to meet with our government." After all this time, Jiwoo had grown up hearing stories about the galaxy beyond their solar system. Her grandmother used to tell her about the great cities on distant worlds, the trade networks that connected thousands of species, the wonders that humanity had been banned from seeing. All because of something called the Titan incident. "Send this to Earth immediately," she ordered. "The colonial government needs to see this." President Dong-sik stared at the message for a long time, before calling an emergency session of the Colonial Assembly. Representatives from Earth, Mars, Europa, and the outer colonies gathered in the Great Hall beneath New Geneva. The debate that followed was fierce. "This is our chance to rejoin galactic civilization," Dong-sik argued. "We've been isolated for 300 years. Our technology has stagnated. Our population is trapped in one solar system. We need this." Admiral Yejin stood up from the military section. She was a veteran of the border conflicts with automated alien probes, one of the few humans who had actually fought alien technology. "President, with respect, this smells like a trap. Why now? What's changed that makes them suddenly want us back?" "Maybe they've finally realized we're not the monsters they painted us as," suggested Representative Minho from the Mars colonies. General Kyung-ho, the oldest member of the assembly, slowly rose to his feet. He was ancient by human standards, over 90 years old, but his mind was still sharp. He had fought in the Titan campaigns as a young soldier. "I've been analyzing the background data in their transmission," he said, his voice carrying across the silent hall. "There are reports of attacks in the outer galaxy. Entire star systems going dark. Mass casualties on a scale that makes Titan look like a minor skirmish." The hall erupted in whispers and concerned murmurs. "They're desperate," Kyung-ho continued. "Something out there has them scared enough to come crawling back to the species they exiled. They don't want to apologize. They want us to solve their problem." Dr. Haewon, the head of Humanities Xenological Studies Department, activated the main holographic display. Images of space battles filled the air above the assembly. "These are fragments we've intercepted from galactic communication networks," she explained. "The attackers call themselves the Vorthak. Their ships are unlike anything in our databases. They appear to be biomechanical, capable of self-repair and adaptation. The images showed alien vessels that looked more grown than built. They moved like living creatures, their hulls pulsing with organic rhythms. In the combat footage, conventional weapons seemed to have little effect on them. Look at their tactics." Haewon pointed to specific battle sequences. "Perfect coordination. Mathematical precision. They fight like a computer program, analyzing enemy patterns and responding with optimal countermeasures." "So what?" asked Representative Soo-jin from Europa. "Superior technology defeats inferior tactics. That's been true throughout history." General Kyung-ho smiled grimly. "That's exactly what the aliens thought about us at Titan. Their ships were better, their weapons more advanced, their tactics more refined. But they lost because they fought like gentlemen, following rules we'd never agreed to follow." He walked to the center of the hall, his old bones creaking. "The Vorthak fight perfectly. Their responses are mathematically optimal. Their coordination is flawless. Against any rational opponent, they're unbeatable." He paused, looking around the room. "But we're not rational. We're human." Commander Minho of the Colonial Navy stood to address the assembly. "If we're going to do this, we need to set terms. No more quarantine. Full membership in the Galactic Council. Access to trade networks. Preparations for 3 centuries of forced isolation." "They'll never agree to that," protested Representative Young-soo. Admiral Yejin's laugh was harsh. "Then let them face these Vorthak alone. See how long their precious civilization lasts without us." The vote was close, but it passed. Humanity would send a delegation to meet with the Galactic Council. Commander Minho was chosen to lead the diplomatic mission aboard the ship Indomitable, humanity's most advanced vessel. As the Indomitable prepared to leave human space for the first time in 3 centuries, its crew felt the weight of history. Engineer Bo Ram ran final checks on the ship's systems, knowing that alien eyes would be studying every detail of human technology. Diplomat Soo-jin reviewed her negotiation strategies, preparing to face species that had treated humanity as outcasts for longer than anyone alive could remember. The moment of truth came when the Indomitable reached the edge of the Sol system. The massive automated defense platforms that had enforced humanity's quarantine for 300 years tracked the ship's movement. Warning signals flashed as the vessel approached the boundary. "This is it," Minho announced to his crew. "We're about to make history." The ship crossed the invisible line that had kept humanity trapped for so long. The defense platforms swiveled to track their movement but did not fire. For the first time in centuries, a human ship was free to travel among the stars. Dr. Jin A, the mission's strategic analyst, worked frantically to process all available intelligence about the Vorthak threat. What she found worried her. These weren't simple raiders or pirates. They were something far more dangerous. "They learn," she reported to Minho. "Every battle makes them stronger. Every tactic used against them becomes useless as they adapt and counter it. They're not just conquering the galaxy, they're consuming it. How do you fight something like that?" Minho asked. Jin-A smiled, but there was no humor in it. "You don't fight it. You become something it can't predict, can't analyze, can't understand. You become chaos." As the Indomitable traveled toward its meeting with the Galactic Council, humanity prepared for war. In shipyards around Earth and Mars, old designs were pulled from archives. Not the elegant, efficient vessels favored by galactic civilization, but the brutal, angular warships that had made the aliens fear humanity in the first place. Admiral Yejin stood in the command center of the Luna shipyards, watching as workers assembled humanity's first battle fleet in 3 centuries. The ships looked nothing like the graceful alien vessels they had seen in intercepted transmissions. They were ugly, aggressive, built for one purpose: to destroy enemies who thought they understood the rules of war. "Sir," her aide reported, "the first squadron will be ready within the month." "Should we follow standard fleet doctrine for formation and tactics?" Yejin shook her head. "There is no standard doctrine anymore. Every ship captain gets to choose their own tactics. Every engagement will be different. We're not going to give these Vorthak anything they can analyze and counter." As humanity prepared to rejoin a galaxy that had rejected them, one thing was certain. The Vorthak had never faced an enemy like this. They had conquered species that fought with logic, honor, and predictable patterns. They were about to learn what happened when order met chaos. Admiral Taemin stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the screens with growing horror. The reports kept coming in, each one worse than the last. 17 star systems had gone silent in just 3 weeks. No distress calls, no final messages, just complete silence where millions of lives had existed moments before. "Sir, we're receiving the last transmission from Kepler Station," his communications officer reported, her voice shaking. The main screen flickered to life, showing the massive research station orbiting a blue gas giant. Taemin had visited Kepler Station many times. 2 million people lived and worked there, studying the mysteries of space. It was one of the safest places in the galaxy, but now something was wrong. Dark shapes moved in the space around the station, too large to be ships, too organic to be machines. They looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh, their surfaces pulsing with veins of light. "This is Station Commander Helra," a voice crackled through the static. "Unknown vessels are attacking. Our weapons have no effect. They're not destroying the station, they're eating it." Taemin watched in disbelief as the alien ships pressed against the station's hull. Where they touched, the metal began to dissolve and flow like liquid into the attackers. The ships grew larger as they consumed the station, adding its mass to their own bodies. "All personnel evacuate immediately." Commander Helra's voice was breaking up. "They're inside now. Dear gods, they're inside the people too. They're changing them, making them part of..." The transmission cut off. On the screen, the station was gone. Only the alien ships remained, now twice their original size, pulsing with new energy. They had consumed everything and everyone. "How long did that take?" Taemin asked quietly. 18 minutes, sir." Dr. So-Young sat in her laboratory aboard the research vessel Harmony's Edge, studying the intercepted transmissions from the fallen worlds. As a xenobiologist, she had spent her career studying alien life forms. But nothing in her training had prepared her for this. The attacking race called themselves the Vorthak, though how they knew this was unclear. They communicated through bioelectrical pulses that her computers could barely translate. What they learned was terrifying. The Vorthak were not just conquerors. They were consumers. Every person they captured, every piece of technology they absorbed, every memory they stole made them stronger and smarter. They learned from their enemies and adapted with each battle. So Young pulled up the historical records, searching through ancient databases that most people had forgotten. Deep in the archives, she found references to something called the Great Silence. 3,000 years ago, half the galaxy had suddenly stopped communicating for nearly a century. When contact was restored, entire civilizations had vanished, leaving only ruins and strange biomechanical artifacts. The few surviving records spoke of a race that came from the void between galaxies, consuming everything in their path. They had retreated to the galactic rim for unknown reasons, and most historians assumed they had died out. They had been wrong. The Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Prime had never seen such chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted at each other in fear and anger. The Zentari delegation demanded immediate military action. The crystal-like Ashani wanted to retreat to heavily defended core worlds. The peaceful Meridians suggested trying to communicate with the invaders. Counselor Veltan of the Zentari slammed his scaled fist on the table. Every moment we waste here, more worlds die. We must activate the Sentinel defense networks and meet these creatures with overwhelming force. The Sentinels were built to stop pirates and raiders, replied Ambassador Korhan of the Trade Federation. These Vorthak are something else entirely. Our weapons pass through their ships like they're not even there. Elder Rohan of the Meridian Collective raised his hand for silence. The ancient being's voice carried the weight of centuries. I have consulted the oldest records in our archives. The Vorthak have awakened before. 3 millennia ago, they consumed half the known galaxy before mysteriously retreating to the rim. What stopped them? Asked the Ashani representative, her crystalline form chiming softly. Rohan's expression was grim. According to our ancestors' testimony, only one force ever made the Vorthak retreat, a young species that fought with such savagery and unpredictability that even the Vorthak could not adapt to their tactics. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what he was talking about, but no one wanted to say it. You're talking about the humans, Veltan said finally. We exiled them for good reason, protested the Ashani ambassador. They're too violent, too unpredictable. The Titan incident proved they can't be trusted. The Titan incident was 300 years ago, Rohan replied. And right now, violence and unpredictability might be exactly what we need. Admiral Taymin received new orders that evening. His fleet was to escort a diplomatic vessel to the edge of human space. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Galactic Council was requesting a meeting with humanity. As his ships approached the Sol system, Taymin stared at the massive defense platforms that ringed human space. The quarantine barriers had kept humanity locked in their home system for 300 years. Automated weapons tracked his ships but did not fire. The humans knew they were coming. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth, his communications officer reported. A human face appeared on the screen. Taymin had never seen a human before, but he knew immediately what he was looking at. The features were similar to many humanoid species, but the eyes were different. They held a hardness, a readiness for violence that made Taymin uncomfortable. This is Admiral Ye Jin of the human colonial fleet, the woman said. State your business in our territory. Admiral, I am Taymin of the Galactic Defense Force. We come bearing an invitation from the Council. The galaxy needs your help. Ye Jin's expression didn't change. 300 years you've kept us locked in this system like criminals. Now you want our help? What's changed? The Vorthak have returned. For the first time, emotion flickered across the human's face. It wasn't fear. It was something much more dangerous. We'll send a delegation, Ye Jin said finally. But understand this, alien. If this is some trick to finish what you started at Titan, you'll learn why your ancestors were wise to fear us. The transmission ended, leaving Taymin staring at a blank screen. In requesting humanity's help, had the galaxy just invited back its salvation or its doom? Only time would tell.